Officer Madsen, I understand your concern, but what you are suggesting is ridiculous. I can't just leave my home, not without a concrete reason. How long did you say we had to stay away? A full month or two? I spent my whole life saving for this house. We built it from the ground up and perfectly customized it to our liking. My family wants nothing more than to be here. This was the third time in just as many days when Dave had received orders to leave his house immediately and head to safety. He lived only a few miles from Okefenokee Swamp, and according to all three officers, something dangerous was lurking there. Any additional information was supposedly classified, and he was unable to sway any of them into divulging more. They had each claimed to not know the full story. Dave's wife had insisted on traveling to safety, as did almost everyone else on their street. She had taken their 2 kids 50 miles south. Luckily, they had evacuated early enough to find a hotel with rooms still available. But without the house, they would be ruined, and so Dave decided to stay. If something were placing his property and lifestyle at risk, he would rather put up a fight than sit idle. He was used to large snakes and alligators, which were common in the swamp. What could be more dangerous than them? Don't say I didn't warn you, Dave. Here, take this card. If you notice anything strange or suspicious, give us a call. We would much rather you leave, but if you insist on putting your life at risk, you may as well be of some use. With that, Officer Madsen left, leaving the street in far too much silence for a Saturday morning. Everyone else had gone, with the exception of one. "Hey, Mac," Dave yelled as he banged on the front door of the only other inhabited house. "Mac, are you there?" he yelled louder. Yeah, give me a minute," came the response. "That door is busted enough without you banging on it like that." An older, retired man in his early 70s opened the door, a smoke in one hand and a beer in the other. "Did they get to you yet, Dave? Have you decided to abandon me, too, on this most apocalyptic of fair-weather days? I don't see no tsunami rolling by, no fiery comets raining down, nor any band of raving wildebeests tearing loose through the streets. Ain't no way I'm leaving my property, Dave. 5 decades I've been here, and I reckon I may just stay another 5. This house is meant for me, and I for it, and no scaredy-cat police department is going to flush me out." "No, Mac, calm down. I insisted on staying. Did they give you one of those silver cards, too, with the phone number in case of emergency?" Dave asked. Yeah, they did. Lost it somewhere in the jumble on the table. If I need it badly enough, I'll resign to cleaning the thing. I woke early to Jimmy calling me around 6. He's the only one left in his neighborhood, and he ain't budging either. We're set to meet up 30 minutes from now, and you are welcome to join. It is the end of the world, after all. The last 3 holdouts against the great classified unknown. Half an hour later, Dave was sitting in the passenger seat of Mac's old Subaru. Mac's arm hung out the driver's side window, still clutching a half-drunk beer. A park halfway between the 2 neighborhoods was their rendezvous point, and when they arrived, Jimmy was already unpacking and assembling a drone. "Jimmy, what's up? That's quite the gizmo to be playing with when the world's about to end," shouted Mac. "Great. You guys made it. Quick, come sit down. We are going to do a little snooping. I have a hunch, and I don't like it." Jimmy was quite serious, and so Dave and Mac sat opposite to him and watched silently as he finished readying the drone. "Great idea, Jimmy. With that, we'll be able to see what's going on in the swamp," Dave exclaimed. "We'll know what we are up against." Jimmy handed a pair of glasses, each to Dave and Mac. These will let you see what the drone sees. Fortunately, I had 3 pairs. Now let's get to work. You guys know I used to work for the government, right? In the carbon sequestration team, right? He asked. Mac looked confused, but Dave briefly remembered a conversation with Jimmy from a couple years prior. Most of Jimmy's work was confidential, and the parts he had discussed were too technical for him, so he had not given it much thought. Jimmy turned the drone on, calibrated it to hover in the air, and directed it straight up. "Wow, this has a great camera on it," exclaimed Mac, as the drone rapidly gained altitude. "I need to get one of these for myself." "They are nice," Jimmy started, then more seriously asked, "Do either of you remember a year or 2 ago when the president announced a tremendous breakthrough in carbon sequestration?" Dave and Mac stayed silent and looked at each other in confusion. "Come on, guys. It was all over the news. A breakthrough to save humankind. I worked on that project, helped engineer it myself, actually. But I became skeptical. I asked too many questions that did not have enough satisfactory answers, I suppose, because I was terminated, fired, for trying to make sure everything was safe." Jimmy angled the drone towards the swamp. They were still a mile or so away, and as the drone began its journey, he continued his story. Before taking the government job, Jimmy had worked in a biology lab where he studied genetic code, particularly with regards to altering the DNA of plants to make them more resistant to harsh climates. With multiple successes over a 20-year career, the government had sought out him and his team to work on a much more important project. The amount of carbon in the atmosphere was reaching dangerous levels, according to the officials. They had hired a think tank to work tirelessly on finding a solution, and after much deliberation, a type of genetically modified plant seemed to be the best solution. "Look here, guys." The drone had made it to the swamp, and Jimmy had zoomed the camera in close to the ground. "Do you know what kind of plant this is? It's a pitcher plant, one of a dozen or so species of carnivorous plants that live around here. Anyway, our government research began with one of those. I do not know why they chose that plant, but they did. Anyway, its genetic code proved to be very malleable. We were tasked with making certain alterations to its genetic code. In the end, we butchered it and spliced it full of so many additional genes that it became unrecognizable. We spliced in genes to make it grow faster, much faster. Genes to increase its ability to uptake water and nutrients, to capture as much carbon as possible, to grow an extensive root system that burrows deep into the ground, to... "Wait, I heard about that," exclaimed Mac. "You designed that crazy plant that grows all those massive twisty roots that are burrowing God knows where down towards hell itself? Didn't those things cause the earthquakes up near the Canadian border last spring? Wasn't one found growing 100 miles out at sea, which was not supposed to be possible? Whatever possessed you to create such an abomination?" Mac was clearly uneasy. "Jimmy, wait, go back," yelled Dave. Jimmy flipped a switch to cause the drone to fly in reverse. "Yes, right there. That is an alligator, right?" Dave asked. The alligator was lying on its side, half covered by some sort of vegetation. Jimmy lowered the drone, and as the alligator became more visible, they noticed that it was not a typical plant covering the alligator. It was 15 or 20 of the carnivorous pitcher plants, and they were growing out of the rotting corpse of the alligator itself. "Guys, you have to believe me when I say it was not supposed to be able to do this. We completely removed the gene that coded for the development of the main pitcher part of the plant. We replaced it with a gene for small purple flowers. I did try to convince the other scientists that something like this was a possibility, and it looks like my fears were correct. The plant had multiple copies of that gene in different parts of its DNA. Random mutations had turned them off throughout eons of evolution, but again, by random chance, those genes must have been reactivated. That's the only explanation for this. Okay, began Dave, but a pitcher plant only eats small insects. They certainly don't attack alligators. We drastically increased the plant's ability to seek out water and nutrients so that it would grow as quickly as possible. It must have found a way to digest large animals, like that alligator, which means that it is evolving quickly. Jimmy moved the drone as close as possible to the bizarre sight of pitcher plants growing out of the side of the alligator. Look here. See those little purple flowers around the stem of the pitcher? That's proof that this is our plant. I don't know how old this one is, but after just a week, its roots will spread out over a 20-foot radius and burrow 100 feet into the ground. It was a huge success. The carbon level in the atmosphere was falling for the first time in centuries, all buried deep underground in the roots of these plants. But it was not supposed to evolve like this. I tried to warn them of the possibility. Jimmy must have flown too close and knocked one of the pitcher plants, for the camera became hazy with what looked like pollen from one of the little purple flowers. He had found the evidence he wanted and pressed the home button on the drone's control panel to make it return to him. Well, guys, we found what we were looking for. Maybe it would be best. Jimmy, that's a person, yelled Mac, lying on the edge of the swamp. Jimmy wheeled around, threw his drone glasses back on, and resumed manually navigating the drone. He backtracked a bit, and sure enough, there was a person laying by the edge of the swamp. The person was wearing an army uniform, and as the drone advanced closer, they saw pitcher plants growing out of his back, just like the alligator. A tangle of roots fell out of his jacket, burrowing back underground a few feet away. Then they spotted another person, then a third, and then a fourth. As the drone gained elevation and the camera zoomed out, they counted 15 people in total. Well, congratulations, Jimmy, yelled Mac. Your engineered plant thing surely is saving humanity now. Jimmy and Dave sat in shock. None of them spoke for the better part of 5 minutes. Jimmy came up with a plan first. Okay, guys, here is what we are going to do. Both of you, go back to your places immediately. I'll pack up the drone, head back to my place to grab some stuff, then pick you up. If the plant is now killing people, we really can't stay here. We should stay together. Find someone who will listen. That silver card with the emergency number. You too, call that number on your way back. I'll come pick you up first, Mac, in 45 minutes maximum. Dave and Mac went back to the Subaru, and they took off, leaving Jimmy to deal with the drone. All right, I got the number here, announced Dave as they began to drive. He dialed it, and Officer Madsen answered. Officer, yelled Dave, we saw it. The plant out in the swamp. We flew a drone over the area, and one of the plants was eating an alligator. A plant eating an alligator? Are you sure? Well, it is confidential information, but the Army is looking into it. They mentioned that they must contain something as soon as possible. It must be that plant. They may even have to use large doses of radiation to do so. Do you believe me now that you should leave? The officer asked. Yes, we are packing some stuff now. But officer, we didn't call you about the alligator. We called you about the 15 dead army men. I don't think they have the situation under control anymore." "Dead?" screamed the officer. "They were supposed to call me this morning. I'm going to place a few calls immediately. Believe me. Then I'm getting as far away from this thing as possible." Once home, Dave immediately called his wife while gathering important things from his house. He placed them in a box by the front door. He would be ready to go as soon as Jimmy and Mac arrived. He sat down in front of the TV to try and pass time faster, but nothing seemed interesting. He paced back and forth across the living room. A couple times he remembered another important trinket, retrieved it, and placed it in the box. Eventually, he lay down on the couch and stared at the ceiling. He waited and waited and waited. Time must have been going in slow motion. He took another minute to concentrate on the absolute silence of his neighborhood street. Usually, it would be full of the sounds of life. Cars driving, lawn mowers and leaf blowers, and kids playing basketball a few houses down from his. The silence was ominous, and he began to feel its weight. He got up and paced some more. The sound of his feet was better than the silence. Then he tried to read a chapter from his favorite book, to no avail. He opened the door to the backyard, drawing it all in just in case he would never see it again. Then he called his wife again. "Honey, are you on the road?" she asked. And then, "No? It's been well over an hour since you called. I thought you said Jimmy was on his way." A chill ran up Dave's spine. Having only met him a couple times, he barely knew Jimmy. But Jimmy did not seem like the type of person to be late to anything. "I'll call you back when we are on the road," Dave said before hanging up. He grabbed his box of important paperwork and things from around the house and carried them up the street to Mac's house. He knocked loudly, then rang the bell when he did not answer, immediately. "Jimmy, is that you?" Mac asked. "Come on in. I have everything ready to go." Dave pushed the door open. "No, it's Dave, so he hasn't come by yet? Where is he?" "The sun's setting in an hour or so," he exclaimed, his voice becoming more frantic as he carried on. "Relax, Dave. Come on in and grab a beer. I'm glad you're here. The silence is starting to spook me." Mac responded. They sat and tried to distract themselves, but the next half hour came and went with no sign of Jimmy. "Want some chips?" asked Mac, as he stood and walked into the kitchen. He grabbed some plates, a large bag of chips, and opened the refrigerator to pull out 2 more beers. "Hey, look at that. I got a message. Must have been some time since you got here. Don't know why it doesn't ring properly anymore." Mac walked across the kitchen to his telephone and pressed a button to play the message. They both knew who it was. It was Jimmy, but his voice was raspy. Even before he began to talk, Dave pulled out his phone, ready to call the emergency number again. "Sorry, Mac. I felt nauseous and had to lay down." They heard him walk to the sink, fill a glass of water and drink it. Maybe just needed water. Anyway, be over in 10 minutes. He filled up the glass of water again, and this time audibly chugged it. I've never felt so dehydrated. 15 seconds of silence passed, and then the water turned on again. It stayed on for too long. Then a crashing thump onto the floor and a scream. "Ouch! Wait! What's going on?" No, it was on the drone, the pollen. "Mac, let's go," Dave yelled, and they both ran to Mac's Subaru while Dave called the emergency number. "This is Officer Daniel," the line responded. "How can I assist you?" "Great. Send someone immediately. Do you know Jimmy? I think he collapsed onto the floor and needs help." Mac searched for Jimmy's address and provided it to the officer. "I'll come over right away. You are the last few people in town, and I am the last officer here. Let's handle this then. All get out of here." When Dave and Mac arrived, Officer Daniel was already there. A couple lights were on in the house. They got out of the car, and as they approached the front door, Officer Daniel was just coming out. He was dragging Jimmy along the ground behind him. "Hey, guys." Found him unconscious on the kitchen floor. Nearest hospital is 20 minutes south, even going 30 over on the highway. If you can keep up, I'll give you an escort. And whatever you told Officer Madsen sure gave him a fright. Dave and Mac watched as Jimmy was hauled into the passenger seat of the police car. They got back into the Subaru to follow. They needed to go south, too. The faster, the better. Mac carefully followed Officer Daniel, driving as fast as safely possible down the center of the highway. At least the road was empty because everyone else had already evacuated. "This is crazy," exclaimed Mac. "It is actually the end of the world. Whoever thought we would witness it? Do you think they might decide to just nuke the whole swamp? That's what I would do at this point." "No, Mac," Dave responded. "Don't you see? It got Jimmy too. Besides, its roots live so deep underground that I don't know if a nuke would stop it. Plus, it grows too fast." Silence fell between them again, until Dave's cell phone began to ring. It was his wife, in tears. "Dave, are you almost here? They just called me. It's not safe here either. We have to go further south or west to a drier climate. A scientist on the news thought our best chance was to go somewhere dry. We are on our... Oh, yikes!" It happened so suddenly. One moment, Officer Daniel was driving straight down the center of the highway, with his lights flashing. Then he slowly drifted into the left lane, then the shoulder, and then completely off the side of the road. He hit something, flipped vertically 2.5 times, and crashed upside down in a ball of flames. "The police officer just crashed. Don't think they could have survived that," Dave yelled into the phone. Mac kept driving. "No point in stopping. It's better this way. We don't need any more of those cursed plants further away from the swamp." "It must have spread from Jimmy to Officer Daniel," Dave reasoned. "Get the kids ready. Mac and I will come pick you up, and then we are getting as far away from here as we can. If they don't like the heat of the desert, start looking for plots of land there." He hung up and tried to close his eyes to block the day's horrors from his mind for just a minute. Tried, because before they were all the way closed, they hit a big speed bump. Dave bounced on his seat, head almost hitting the ceiling. The Subaru swerved, but Mac regained control for just a moment before hitting another big bump. "Damn it!" Mac cried. "Tire is flat, and it sounds like the axle is shot. What was that?" Something was laying all across the road. He put on the brakes and came to a stop. He got out of the car, the smell of burning tire rubber now hanging thick. "Pretty sure I saw what it was. Looked like some of those roots," Dave said. "Be back in a minute. Glad I finally have a use for this." Mac opened the trunk of the Subaru, grabbed what looked to be a flamethrower, and ran back along the road. 15 minutes later, he was back, covered in sweat. "Dave, it was one of those cursed twisted root things like you said, about as thick as my leg. I thought they were only supposed to grow down into the earth. Jimmy, how dare he help create something like this? I burned it up rather good, though, and got it off the highway. We have to nuke them, electrocute them, or get the army to fight back with flamethrowers. Dave, what are you doing in the driver's seat? I'm not tired. I can keep driving." "Mac, listen to me. You saw the roots, but did you see any of the pitcher plants with purple flowers?" "Yeah, I did. There were a bunch of them. In fact, I burned those up too. Hey, come on. Unlock the doors. I have some tissues in the back seat. One of them sprayed me with something. I got to get it off of me. Dave, come on. Dave shifted the car into drive and slammed on the gas. Someone had to survive. A frantically running Mac slowly disappeared behind him in the darkness as the flat tire wobbled horrendously on the broken axle. He grabbed his phone and called his wife. "Honey, I'm still on my way. Ran into a little more trouble, but don't worry. We'll take your car instead." He went as fast as seemed reasonably possible given the condition of the car, and by now he was only a few miles away. Up ahead, the road was cracked. The locals had complained about it for years to no avail. Vegetation had grown along the cracks and within the potholes, but now those cracks and potholes were filled with dozens, perhaps hundreds, of those carnivorous pitcher plants with the purple flowers and the poisonous pollen. Dave did not even consider stopping. He was too panicked, too desperate to get to his wife and to leave Mac as far behind as possible. He rolled across the pitcher plants without a second thought. In fact, he wanted to crush them, take them out from within the perceived safety of the Subaru. As he rolled across them, however, they threw up a thick cloud of pollen. The car's ventilation was open, constantly sucking in air from outside, and before Dave even knew what was happening, he inhaled a large lungful of the foul-smelling pollen. He slammed on the brakes and sat screaming within the car for a full minute. Nothing more he could do. He had tried his best. He exited the car and found a place to lay down and stare up at the stars. He reached for his phone to call his wife, but realized that it was still in the car. He was already too nauseous to stand up, having breathed in such a large amount of the pollen. He turned his attention back to the sky. He even saw a few shooting stars before searing pain crossed his forehead. Or were those streaks of light just his vision failing? "Dave, you came to your senses. Don't ever leave me like that again. I haven't run for 20 minutes straight since the 10th grade. I'm feeling awfully thirsty, though, and quite a bit sick. If we can just make it to the hospital, I think they might know what to do. But we have to go quick. Ready to go? Dave? What are you doing lying on the ground like that anyway? Don't you hear your phone ringing? It's surely your wife." But as Mac approached, he lunged back in a fit of fright, for there he spotted 2 pitcher plants, potted snugly in the sockets of what used to be Dave's eyes,